Good morning. Good morning. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Congregation of Westchester and our online service. You can see from our wonderful prelude that our service is going to be a bit different today. Our minister, Reverend Dan Schatz, is not in the pulpit, but today instead we will be streaming some of the UUA service, Loved into Being. And we have a number of wonderful speakers and musicians that will be joining us today. I especially want to welcome any visitors to our online service this morning. We hope we have a chance to get to know you. You can say hello in the comments or go to ucwc.org or send us an email. welcome@ucwc.org. If you'd like more information about our congregation or would like to be in touch with us directly. We hope that you will join us for our online social hour. The link and the password are in connections, and you'll see them on the screen at the end of the service. Unitarian Universalism holds that great good comes from wide diversity. So, whoever you are, whomever you love, whatever your heritage, and from wherever your beliefs spring, We are pleased that you are here. Let us walk a while together. We have many announcements today that are of great importance and coming up quick. So our first announcement is the Transgender Day of Visibility panel will be March 31st, that's this week, at 7 p.m. In honor of Transgender Day of Visibility, we're hosting an online panel with transgender and gender non-conforming individuals speaking on life, spirituality, and ethics from a non-cisgender perspective. There will be time for questions and answers. All are invited to join us for this special event. Email minister@ucwc.org for more information, or check ucwc.org/Zoom for the link. Another announcement, both our youth and adults are invited to learn about climate justice. Join us tomorrow, Monday, March 29th at 7 p.m. for a presentation on Greta Thunberg's book, Our House is on Fire, and a discussion on what the state of our climate is today and how we can engage this work as Unitarian Universalists. RSVP to adult-re@ucwc.org, or just join us that night. Families and people of all ages are invited to join us in painting kindness rocks. And I know I have a few in my yard, and I smile each time I see them, to decorate our grounds for Walk the Chalk Earth Day event. If you would like to receive a painting kit, please RSVP to dlfd@ucwc.org. And another announcement, calling all members and friends, both new and old. We are running our Exploration Small Group Ministry program again. This is a great casual way to think deeply about what you believe, learn a bit more about our UU identity, and to make connections with our UCWC community. Come and try it out. And our last announcement, on April 18th, we will have our annual poetry service, and we need participants. Our theme this year is connecting with each other through poetry. Congregation members of all ages are invited to read or submit their own poetry or some of their favorite verses. If you or your child would like to participate, please contact Sarah Heisen at poetry@ucwc.org. All poems must be submitted by Sunday, April 11th. And as a reminder, please check connections and our online calendar for more information and for access to these events. And now we have a stewardships update from our board president, Matt Zensky. April 11th. And as a reminder, please check.
Okay. Yeah, I have great news to report on the stewardship front. We are 71% of the way there. Thank you all. We exactly half of our pledging units have responded, so thank you very much. And there's an amazing amount of generosity reflected in those pledges. More than half of those who pledged so far have already increased their pledges. So that is a wonderful development, 71% of the way toward our goal, with only half of the pledges, the pledging units reporting. So thank you very much. And I think it really speaks to the kinds of meaning that people draw from our experience here at UCWC. And I wanted to share with you some of the thoughts that had been given to us as the board consulted the membership during the town hall process on the mission statement. And the overriding theme that we got in all your comments and suggestions and feedback was community. UCWC is a community where you find a spiritual home, you find a religious home. In some ways, it's a third place. There's your home life, there's work life, and then there's UCWC. It's kind of an anchor third place where there's tolerance, there's acceptance, you feel safe. It's an environment of inclusion, there's spiritual nourishment, we can live our values. It's a safe haven for those who feel a little different or struggling in the world. It's a place for exploring and learning. We welcome diversity. So these are all the kinds of values that you say you find here at UCWC, and we certainly appreciate knowing that and hope that your appreciation will be reflected in pledges going forward. So thank you very much. We'll continue making good progress. And from here, we will send you back to the UUA portion of the service. So thanks.
Welcome. I'm Reverend Erika Hewitt, the Minister of Worship Arts at the Unitarian Universalist Association. I live on the ancestral lands of the Abenaki people on the coast of Maine, and my pronouns are she, her, hers.
I'm Reverend Vail Weller, Congregational Giving Director at the UUA. I live on the ancestral land of the Ohlone people in San Mateo, California, and I use she, her, her pronouns. This worship service is an offering from your UUA, Worship Web, our Stewardship and Development Department, and your UUA President. It's an expression of our covenant to and with each other.
You are part of us and we are part of you. In our joyful process of collaboration with the stellar religious professionals you're about to meet, we centered our care for you, the congregations of the Unitarian Universalist Association.
Even in these times when we are with one another virtually, let us remember that we belong to one another.
We are loved into being.
These are times of isolation and loneliness. Our hearts long for connection and for one another.
Illness has visited our lives. Struggle and pain are in our communities. Our children's lives have been disrupted. There has been such great loss.
And yet we are surrounded by beauty, by grace, and by music that blesses us.
All the while, we are surrounded by love. We are loved into courage.
We are loved into community. We are loved into generosity. We are loved into being. We are loved into being.
Come, let us open our hearts and grow the size of our souls. Come, let us worship together. I'm joining you here from First Parish in Cambridge, and I want to thank the First Parish community and Reverend Adam Lawrence Dyer for offering their space to us. First Parish sits on the occupied land of the Massachusetts people. A community of the Massachusetts people still live in Massachusetts in the community of Canton. I have a story for you today. And there's two things that are important about this story. Number one, it's a true story. And number two, it's an anonymous story. So I read this story many years ago in Yes magazine, and the author of the story was listed only as Jane B. I love this story because it speaks to the fact that even in incredibly difficult circumstances, that the presence of love, that acts of generosity and hospitality really are life-saving. Here's Jane's story. Jane and her brother grew up in the 1940s in Hollywood, California, a town known for show business. Now, Jane says that she and her brother were adopted by their parents, not because their parents loved children, but because their parents thought it completed the image of the perfect Hollywood family. A beautiful home in Beverly Hills, a fleet of servants, 2 adorable children, and a little spaniel dog. Jane and her brother hardly ever saw their parents. They were largely raised by the housekeepers and nannies. It was only on Sunday when the whole family went to the country club. There, Jane and her brother were expected to be perfectly well behaved, not to run around or get dirty, to know which piece of silverware to use at every course, to be seen but not heard. They were taught to speak only when spoken to. Looking back, Jane said of herself, "I wasn't a real girl. I was a cardboard cutout of a girl." Jane's best memories from her childhood were when she was with her grandmother. And one day, her grandmother took her to a rummage sale in a church basement. Now, this was Hollywood, California. So this rummage sale was filled with costumes and fancy clothes that were from the movies or from movie stars. Jane's grandmother gave her $2, which was a lot of money at that time, and said, "Buy whatever you want." Well, Jane went home with 2 armfuls of things. And as soon as she got home, she ran straight up to her room with all of that loot. And she started trying things on. Finally, she settled on a little pink night dress, a big broad hat, white satin gloves, and every piece of costume jewelry that she bought. She looked at herself in the mirror, and Jane was awestruck. She looked like a different person. She decided to give herself a new name, Madame Modifus. Now, whereas Jane was quiet, Madame Modifus was bold. And whereas Jane was shy, Madame Modifus was flamboyant. And whereas Jane always did exactly as she was told, well, Madame Modifus, she had a mind of her own. Jane, all dressed up, ran down the stairs across the yard to the house next door and knocked on the door. When the mother next door and her little son opened the door, their jaws fell open. Jane said, "My name is Madame Modifus. May I come in for tea?" Well, the mother and her son, they welcomed Jane into their home. They played for hours, and then Jane went back to her house. Now, any time that Jane had a little bit of time to herself, she would get all dressed up and she would run to the neighbor's house, and they just came to call her Madame Modifus. Jane ends her story by sharing how she now is a grandmother, and that one of her favorite things to do is to visit her own grandchildren, and that whenever she goes to see them, they wait for her outside on the yard, and when she pulls into the driveway, they jump up and down and scream her name, Maudie, 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 the only name they've ever known her by.
Well, these were wonderful, wonderful speakers, weren't they? And we have more coming up. And now it is time for our unison affirmation. We gather, aspiring to be a thriving. Well, these were wonderful, wonderful speakers, weren't they? And we have more coming up. And now it is time for our unison affirmation. We gather, aspiring to be a thriving, caring, and welcoming community that supports each person's spiritual journey, embraces diversity, challenges us to live responsibly, and is a catalyst for a just and compassionate world. Our community sends in cards so that we can share joys and sorrows. And we will hear from a member of our pastoral care team, Fatima Patel. But first, please join us in singing There Is a Love.
There is a love holding me. There is a love holding all that I love. There is a love holding me. I rest in this love.
Good morning. My name is Fatima Patel, and I'm a member of the pastoral care team and the contact person for the month of March. The contact person for the month of April will be Barbara Dallara. There are no cards of sharing this morning. As always, a candle was lit for all the unspoken joys, sorrows, and concerns.
And we sing again, There Is a Love.
There is a love holding us. There is a love holding all that we love. There is a love holding us. We rest in this love.
Dear ones, we will now enter a time of libations, lamentation, and prayer. The pouring of libations is a centuries-old ritual performed by many cultures. At the core of this sacred ritual is the calling forth of personal and collective ancestors across the millennium and across all space. Libations are poured to honor life, all life. Before we begin, it is just and holy that we honor the original lands of the indigenous community or communities where we live. As I am here at Community Church of New York in New York City, specifically Midtown Manhattan, I must honor that these lands are of the Lenape peoples. The Lenape offspring of the Algonquin civilization and includes present-day New Jersey, New York, and Delaware. If you know them, please call to mind the indigenous peoples where you reside, honoring that these lands are not ours, and we must always honor this truth. I will now call upon the ancestors from all directions as I remain before you, even virtually. I invite you to respond Ashe as each direction is honored. The pouring of libations. To the east, lands of the rising sun, elements of air with the color yellow, ancestors of the East, be with us now. Ashe. To the south, welcoming the ancestors of African ancestry. The element is fire and the color is red. Be with us now. Ashe. To the west, lands of the setting sun, the element of water with the color of blue, the emotional realm, ancestors of the west, be with us now. Ashe. To the north, the elements of earth with the color of green, the direction of sustenance and grounding. Ancestors of the north, be with us now. Ashe. Lastly, I pour libations to the heavens, the plants, the seas, the animals, and all winged creatures. Be with us now. Ashe. Our time of lament. Friends, both near and far, we have been and are in some of the most difficult times the world has experienced in over 100 years. COVID-19 continues to unleash havoc on this country and the world, with over 500,000 people dying here in the United States, the most the world over, even as over 1 million vaccines are being given daily. The level of grief so many are experiencing with isolation, feeling like incarceration, full-time parenting, providing online, full-time educational learning for children is much too much. That is, if you can afford to be at home at all. Some of our workloads have produced a level of fatigue, particularly for some mothers and other caregivers, creating levels of despair, which is leading to depression. We indeed must lament. We must grieve how difficult this is and continues to be for so many. At once, it's also true that we recently heard the life expectancy for everyone has decreased during the pandemic. For African Americans, social scientists have stated the life expectancy during the pandemic is decreased by 3 years. 2 years for our Latinx communities and 1 year for those who are white. We also know as a country, the vaccines are being distributed in inequitable ways, and the world over, 75% of the vaccines are going to more wealthy countries, not where they are needed most. We must lament. Yes, give yourself time to lament, to grieve, to shout, scream, cry, and sometimes it feels laughable how it's going on. And we can continue to find beauty. Let us continue to reach out to others in even more innovative ways. Lean on and nurture your Unitarian Universalist faith and share what you are feeling. Let us also create. Let's create music, art, joy, and safe human touch where possible. Amen. I couldn't hear y'all. Amen. I would now like to invite us into a moment of prayer as we prepare our hearts and minds for today's loved into being service. Please take a few moments to locate your breath in your body. Take this moment to breathe. to breathe deeply. Just notice where your breath is in your body without judgment. A moment of prayer. Spirit of life, love, nameless one, God. We gather in times of great peril for so many. Our social and political systems are in great upheaval, even as we are rising up to end all systemic oppressions. Yet, the COVID-19 virus continues to mutate, even as the vaccines are being given. 10 million people have lost their jobs, with many of them, mostly Black and brown people, will never return to those very jobs. It's also true that millions in Texas and other parts of the globe are experiencing impacts of climate change, which will forever change their lives. Great Spirit, be with us now and them always. As we prepare our hearts and minds for the word today, please give us the courage to know that Unitarian Universalism can and does transform lives, and we have sacred, holy work to do to decenter whiteness within ourselves, each congregation, and our communities. Our communities and the world need our highest aspirations and ideals as a living faith tradition to rise up in all of us as we continue to love ourselves and each other into holy being. This is ongoing, demanding, sacred, yes, sacred work. And I believe we collectively can do it. Do you? Amen. Ashe. Blessed be. Shalom. Salam. And may it be so.
Then a rainstorm came over me, and I felt my spirit break. I had lost all of my belief, you see. I realized my mistake, but time threw a prayer to me, and all around me became still. I need love, love's divine. Please forgive me now. I see that I've been blind. Give me love, love is what I need to help me know my name. In the rainstorm came sanctuary. And I felt my spirit fly. I have found all of my reality. I realized what it takes. Give me love, I need love. Love is what I need to help me know my name. Oh, give me love. Love's divine. Please forgive me now. I see that I've been blind. Give me love. Love is what I need. Love is what I need to help me. When I've walked to the end of my road, I've walked to the end of my road. Love, love, I need love. Love is what I need to help me know my name. And if you just love me, love will help me know my name.
Yes, love is what I need to know my name. These words from the artist's seal capture the meaning of our story today. The story of Jane and her discovery of her full self and her real name, Maudie. Jane's story captured my attention the first time I read it. Her words, "I wasn't a real girl. I was a cardboard cutout of a girl." They stayed with me. It's clear the trauma and the pain of her home life. And this isn't unique or even uncommon for children, for any of us. So many of us know these experiences in our home lives, in our work lives, or in the stifling cultural conditions of oppression that seek to make us small, quiet, invisible. Conditions that seek to rob us of our fullness. But then something happens for Jane. Through the love of her grandmother, the generous embrace of the neighbors, and a little bit of imagination, Jane's full self, Maudie, finds expression. The freedom she experiences is in moments. Those moments when she's able to steal away from her house and go to her neighbors. But it is enough. These small moments of joy and love in the midst of the neglect and the suffering, they are life-saving. Zora Neale Hurston writes, "Love makes your soul crawl out from its hiding place." And that is exactly what Maudie's soul does. She is loved into the fullness of her being. I hear echoes of my own story in this story, and maybe you do too. For me, in a time of tremendous difficulty in my life, my UU church was the neighbor's house, full of warmth and welcome, music and imagination. And the grandmother, that was my Sunday school teachers, whose love and care, coupled with joy and attention, it made a difference in my life when I most needed it. That congregation, that community, those teachers, they helped me find my voice, my spirit, my soul. They loved me into being. I imagine that you too have stories like this. How Unitarian Universalism, its theology, its people, its ministry changed you, saved your life, helped your soul crawl out of its hiding space. How it helped grow the size of your soul. As process theologian Bernard Loomer so powerfully describes, by size, I mean the stature of a person's soul, the range and depth of your love, your capacity for relationships. I mean the volume of life you can take into your being and still maintain your integrity and individuality. There's so much expansiveness and generosity in Loomer's definition of the size of your soul. And he goes on. He says, I mean the strength of your spirit to encourage others to become freer in the development in their diversity and uniqueness. I mean the magnanimity of concern to provide conditions that enable others to increase in stature. You see, Loomer is not just talking about individual growth and liberation. And this matters to us as Unitarian Universalists because our faith has never been solely about individual spiritual growth. As Unitarian Universalists, we understand salvation not as individual but collective. We recognize the fundamental interconnectedness, interdependence of all life and of humanity. Foundational to the core theological idea of interdependence is that mutuality and responsibility are inherent to who we are as human beings. We are not islands. And our tradition calls us not to individual freedom or transformation alone, but to the liberation and thriving of all people. One of the most important and successful campaigns within Unitarian Universalism over this past year was UU the Vote, a national effort for Unitarian Universalists to partner with local grassroots organizing and voting rights groups on an unprecedented voter engagement, voter registration, and voter turnout effort. It was the first ever effort like this on our part as a larger association, and it was awesome. But here's something you may not know about UU the Vote. When I first shared the idea for UU the Vote at the 2019 General Assembly, I didn't know if it would take hold. I was simply throwing out a seed of a dream, imagining there before thousands of you, congregational delegates at GA, I asked, what if we as UUs helped engage and mobilize 1 million people to vote in the 2020 election? When I said that, it was scary. It seemed impossible. And in fact, the next time I talked about UU the Vote at a local congregation, I reduced the number to 500,000. But before we'd even started to create the team and the infrastructure, when we were still just talking about this idea, congregational leaders, ministers, religious educators, and members were clamoring to volunteer. Financial gifts began coming in, some unsolicited. Folks were ready to say yes, ready to give generously of their time and resources because they knew that our values of justice and compassion, that our system of democracy and the literal lives and well-being of our neighbors, of our loved ones, of each other were on the line and on the ballot. Thousands of people volunteered. Thousands of donors came forward from our congregations, many of you, and together we invested tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of hours and well over $1 million to vote love in the 2020 election. And in the end, we reached well over 3 million potential voters, far exceeding our wildest dreams. In what was the largest, most transparent and accessible election in our history, we UUs played a significant role. And we were likely the largest, most organized, faith-based pro-democracy effort during the election. Wow. Imagination, generosity, commitment, collective action. These fueled UU the Vote. But there was also some magic to it, because it recognized our strengths and it invited us more fully into who we are. For we are the people who show up. We are the people who work together in community. We are people who believe in democracy, who understand our faith as active, who are concerned about the conditions of justice here and now, and who, when it comes right down to it, are a hopeful people. We are a hopeful people about what is possible and about our agency and capacity to meet the challenges of our time. Some of the magic of UU the Vote was that together we were loving each other into the fullness of who we are as Unitarian Universalists. But this isn't the end of the story. It is a reminder. It is a glimpse of what is possible when we say yes. When we say yes so generously and powerfully to what we believe in, to what we care about, to our ministries, our values, and when we choose solidarity, interdependence with wider networks of people working for justice, compassion, and liberation. From the beginning of my time as UUA president, I have said, this is no time for a casual faith, no time for a casual commitment to what you love most, and this is no time to go it alone. UU the Vote is just one example of what it looks like to take our faith, our values, and our commitment to interdependence seriously. It is life-saving, life-changing ministry, individually in our own lives, and revolutionary when we bring that powerful yes out into the world. And this yes is what is needed so deeply in our communities and our world right now. To love our society, to love our world into a new place of being. In her important book, Caste, Isabel Wilkerson explores the conditions of racism, white supremacy, and racial hierarchy as an American caste system. And in her book, she quotes Gary Michael Tartikoff, an American scholar of castes, who says of the United States, "This is a civilization searching for its humanity. It dehumanized others in order to build its civilization, and now it needs to find its own." There's power in those words and that history. So how do we find our humanity as a society, as a country, as a civilization? The Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King said the key was love. By love, King did not mean a sentimental or romantic kind of love, but rather an overflowing, audacious, and unconditional love that sought the fullest unfolding of every person. King said this love might well be the salvation of our civilization. The only way that we overcome the forces of racism, domination, discrimination, dehumanization, the forces that are at the foundation of the United States, those forces that have the effect of dehumanizing our society, the only way we overcome those forces is to turn to the deepest source of our humanity. And as Unitarian Universalists, we know that that foundation, that source of our humanity, is our compassion and our interdependence, our mutuality and relationship and responsibility to each other. In other words, I would take Bernard Loomer's words and King's words and say we need to grow the size of our love. And by size, as Loomer says, I mean the range and depth of your love, your capacity for relationships. I mean the volume of life you can take into your being. I mean the strength of your spirit to encourage others to become freer, to provide conditions that enable others to increase their stature, the size of their love and their soul. And this is where the real spiritual depth and calling of our faith lives, not just as an intellectual exercise, but as embodiment. Embodying and growing our capacity for this powerful form of love that encourages all of us to live into the fullness of our being and that is committed to the conditions that make this fullness possible for everyone. Compassion, interdependence. Looking back, the love of her grandmother, that trip to the church rummage sale, and the generous, inclusive embrace of her neighbors made a powerful difference to young Jane, to Maudie. Looking back, the warmth and magic of my UU church and the love and care of my Sunday school and youth leaders shaped my life and my calling in ways that I will always be grateful for and will never be able to repay. Looking back, UU the Vote became this incredible source of community, joy, and positive action in the midst of what was one of the most traumatic times in our lives. It drew us together in unprecedented ways and was a lifeline. And this is not the end of the story. It's just a glimpse, just a few stories to capture some of what is possible in all of our congregations when we say yes. When we say yes boldly, audaciously, powerfully to our values, to our spirits and our love, and to one another. These stories and more are happening all across our congregations. None of us will ever know all the difference that our generosity to our congregations has made to the lives of our children, our families, our elders, to the lives and conditions of our larger communities. We'll never know all the ways that we have helped make a difference. When we give boldly, generously, audaciously of our financial resources as we are able, we make our values and our ministry manifest in the world. When we give generously of our hearts and our care and our love to our children and families, elders and adults, young adults and youth, we change lives. We save lives. And when we dream big, as leaders and staff about the impact we are called to make in the wider world, lives are changed. The material conditions of our communities can change. We are changed. We make it possible. Loved into fullness, loved into being. May we keep saying yes, boldly, courageously, and lovingly to our values and our faith. May it be so.
Powerful, powerful words. And now it is time for our offertory here at UCWC. We are very grateful for all the gifts of our members that are keeping us going. While we're online, you can donate on the website, by PayPal QR code, or mail a check to UCWC. And if you can add a little bit to what you pledge monthly, we are very grateful. Thank you for all these gifts and your generosity in every form. And don't forget to send in your stewardship pledges. We will now receive the morning offering as we listen to our wonderful Jason play. For these gifts, we are so grateful. And for all that we've received from UUA today, we are incredibly grateful. Thank you so much for joining us today. Please join us for our online social hour on Zoom. And our postlude is from UUA. Thank you again.
You're broken down and tired of living life on a merry-go-round, and you can find the fighter, but I see it in you, so we go walk it out.